Okay, can you hear me now? The Guabble said you can't hear me, and I just realized that for some reason OBS switched to not my microphone, so sorry about that. Take this time to adjust the box art. Okay, well I don't remember exactly everything that I just said, but the long and short of it is, this is an early stream. It's going to be a short stream because more Brewer Playoff Baseball. I showed off that I'm wearing both my Brewers powder blue sweatshirt and my Jason Voorhees, You and Your Friends Are Dead t-shirt to sort of make sure I'm in both appropriate spirits for today. Go Brewers, by the way. They beat the Dodgers last night in what was initially kind of a blowout and then turned into a nail-biter towards the end. So, go Brewers. But, yeah, so this is going to be a shorter stream because playoff baseball, some other stuff I got going on today, and I was saying that, you know, I'd considered putting this off and doing like a super late night stream tonight, but I don't know what time I'm going to be able to actually do that, you know, and so rather than end up streaming at like 1 a.m. because that's, you know, the time that I finally am available to do it, I would just do it in the afternoon. So it's been done, so I don't miss a day. And also feel unmotivated, like if I get home late or if I'm, you know, not done with stuff until late. And then it's like, oh, now I have to stream, even though I kind of don't want to. Like, that's not fun. So, better to knock it out early in the day. So you can jump onto the stairs, but not off of them in this game. And this is just sort of a continuation of... Not everything this year is going to be like a week-long block of different series or whatever. I know I did a bunch of Makai Mora, and now I'm doing a bunch of Castlevania, but... you know, Mike did XCOM as well. I did Night Trap. I thought you could hit those things. Kill them in midair. Maybe not. There we go. Just my timing was off. So it's not just going to be these themed sort of weeks. But, you know, this is a great game, and I was saying earlier before I realized that I was having mic trouble, that everybody's pretty familiar with this game. There's a lot of full playthroughs already, you know, online of this game. So if I don't do a full playthrough, it's not like, you know, don't want the stopwatch. I love little background details like the skeletal horses just sort of like grazing in the like Dracula has undead livestock for some reason. Definitely didn't want that. Which is a really good weapon for facing this dude. Not that this dude is hard or anything, but still. Hope everybody's having a lovely Saturday. I hope you're finding time to watch some scary movies and whatnot. I think I was also saying before the audio problems were addressed that I got home so late last night after the Brewer game, I was gonna watch Apostle on Netflix, the new Netflix movie from the Raid director, starring Dan Stevens from Legion and Downton Abbey, apparently. I don't watch Downton Abbey, but my wife did. But it was just so late that I didn't get around to it, so depending on what time I get home tonight, or depending on, you know, what I got going on tomorrow. Well, tonight or tomorrow. Depends on the time I get home tonight, but I'm either going to watch it tonight or tomorrow. Music in this game is really good. Which I guess, you know, I think we talked about this the other night, but it's sort of a hallmark of this series, really. The music is always good. There we go. I was trying to remember how to get over there. You just jump. You are richly rewarded with one of the best sub-weapons in the game. It's a bit of a gotcha. George Glenn says, I remember this game. I did too. This was a really early... The Super Nintendo had like a staggeringly good early lineup. The first like 2 years of the Super Nintendo are possibly unmatched by any other system that I can think of. Maybe the first 2 years of the actual NES, because it had a 3-year head start in Japan. But even then, I'm trying to think of games by autumn of '87 where there are really dope NES games out. Like, nah, not really. Especially ones that weren't published by Nintendo. But the Super Nintendo, you know, which only had a couple-month lead in Japan, by the time it hit its second birthday, I mean, it was just firing on all cylinders. The Genesis had a surprise... All things considered, the Genesis had a very good first couple of years, but given that they didn't have any major third-party support, they were doing so much stuff internally themselves. But the Super Nintendo, man, it's not my favorite system, and I realize that it is for a lot of folks who are my age, but the NES is actually my favorite console of all time. But I totally get, you know, if you're a person who's like, the Super NES is my favorite system, I totally get it, because, yeah, the library, especially in the early days, I shouldn't even say that, because there are later games that are good too, but it's just, it's so amazing how many great games came out for this system in the first, you know, again, 2 years. And yeah, I played this game when it first came out, and I actually remember not liking it as much because I really liked Castlevania 3 with the 3 partner characters and the branching pathways. Didn't I get a Roman numeral 2 in the last stage? I can't throw 2 sub-weapons at once, though. That's bogus. But yeah, I really liked Castlevania 3, and I remember... now I got a Roman numeral 2. And I remember feeling like it was a step backwards. You know, to not have the branching pathways, to not have that stuff. But when you're young, I think you think of things in different terms than you do when you get older. At least I hope you do. And while I still think Castlevania 3 is a better game, and honestly, of the traditionally structured, you know, sort of forward, what some people refer to as vintage-vania style games, 3 is still my favorite of all those, but taken on its own terms, this game is very good, and I like it quite a bit. Except when stuff like that happens. I mentioned this the other night when I was playing original Castlevania, but charging the whip is super dumb. Like, what is the point? Because you almost always get the 2 power-ups, like, immediately. So... like, there we go. I'm, you know, 30 seconds into the stage and my whip's fully powered up, so what's the point? Just let me start with the fully powered up whip. And, you know, this game has some slowdown. And, of course, stalwart Genesis defenders, which, I mean, I do consider myself in a lot of ways a stalwart Genesis defender, but I guess I should say Genesis fanboys. Just a stupid thing to be in 2018, but we'll always say, like, oh, the Super Nintendo had all this slowdown. And, like, yeah, I mean, that's true, but it doesn't mean that a lot of the games weren't still great. Because they were. Underground waterway into the castle. I don't remember if those drops hurt you. No, they don't. They're purely aesthetic. I don't remember if they were like Mega Man 2 style, like acid drops that do damage to you or something. Oh, right. These guys. Crazy Eyes 89 says best Castlevania out of the series. Respectfully disagree, sir. Yes, you look. Your avatar is small, but you look like a sir. So respectfully disagree, sir. Omega Jack Red says hello. What's up? I really can't wait for Halloween. You know, honestly, I spend September not being able to wait for October, but once it's October, I'm celebrating Halloween all month, man. So. By doing stuff like this, in fact. So, you know, I'm working on a couple of videos. I'm hoping that the Obscure Old Games episode for Halloween this year will be up for Patreon supporters. No, I did not want that, but I was in a position where it kind of fell in my head. But I guess I'll use it to kill this bone pillar. Yeah, I spend a lot of September being like, can't wait for October, but once it's October, man, it's on. Oh, good, I got my cross pack. It's on, and I'm celebrating Halloween all month. The day is not super important. I usually try to do something fun on the day, but it's, you know, it's whatever. Crazy Eye says, you have to appreciate what they did with level designs and ingenuity at the time. The Super Nintendo hardware for the time, that's why I say that. I agree, and I think that there is a lot to be said for putting a game in its time and taking it on its own terms. That being said, I still think Castlevania 3 is a better game. I think, honestly, Bloodlines is a better game. Ooh, holy water. I think Symphony of the Night is a better game. I think Dracula X... Not Super Nintendo Dracula X, to be clear. PC Engine Dracula X is a better game. You know, that's just... But that's not to take anything away from this game. I still really like this game. This is a very good game. I think being like the 7th best Castlevania or whatever is still like a pretty good... Because this is a really consistent series. Excuse me. That wasn't fair game. I sneezed and you dropped pillars on my head. Wow. I didn't realize debris would... I love that this game assigns the sub-weapon to a button that's not up and attack, but I instinctually still press up and attack, and then I'm like, oh, right. Up and attack whips up. Oh, that's right. Can't kill those things. I think I might keep the holy water for now, actually. The cross is a good weapon, but the holy water... Crazy Eyes says, are you using a Super NES EverDrive? I have a Super NES EverDrive, which I really need to upgrade to an SD to SNES. But no, this is an original cartridge. This is the Genuine article. I actually bought this. This is one of those pickups that I remember. I got this game and Super Punch-Out from local mom and pop when I lived in Milwaukee on the same day, in the same trip, and they were, I think, like $6 each. And that was when they were already climbing in price. Like, it was a good deal at the time because Super Nintendo games, especially those two, maybe not especially, but including those two, were already climbing in value. The Unlikely Toad says, I really like the sound design of Bloodlines. Yeah, same. People like to talk smack about, I guess now I'm going to go the other way and say Super Nintendo fanboys, which is a strange thing to be in 2018. Whoops. What? There's a floor down there. Like, I was just down there. We'll talk smack about the Genesis sound hardware, and I will admit that when people were lazy about it, or not even lazy, but had limited budgets, and if they used gens or gems, I don't remember what the sound driver was called, but it's really the default sound hardware that Sega just included, it didn't sound very good. But when people wrote their own sound software stuff for programming that Yamaha FM chip, like, the thing sings. And Castlevania Bloodlines, I think, is one of those cases where it just sounds so good. Crazy Eyes 89 says that's a steal. It really was, and again, even at the time, it's not like there's some games where I'm like, oh yeah, I got Demon's Crest for like, I don't know, $8, I think, or $10 at one point, and that one, it was just because it hadn't exploded in value yet. It was sort of still in the I don't want to say pre-YouTube days. Actually, no, that one probably was in the pre-YouTube days. So there wasn't this huge community of vintage game folks. Super Nintendo nostalgia hadn't fully hit yet. Like, there's just a bunch of factors where, like, that game just wasn't worth that much. So, you know, but Super Castlevania and Super Punch-Out, when I bought those for, whatever, $8 a piece, they were already, like, eBay was a thing, and YouTube was a thing, and they really both should have sold for more than that already by that point, so that was a great deal. The Guable, I think I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, I apologize. The Guable says, I still haven't completed. I definitely did not want that, nor did I need to swing over to a platform like that to get it. Stupid stopwatch. Says I still haven't completed Super Ghouls and Ghosts properly. It's tough. I've done it, but it's hard. I was playing it the other night. I wanted to do the first loop and didn't quite get there. But I have done it in the past. You know, once you have the princess bracelet, see, what is the point of powering up the whip? Like, just give me the powered up whip, because literally the first pickup, was a whip power up. What is the point? This is a game that really did well to show off the power of this system so early on. Getting back to what I was saying earlier, we were talking about the early Super NES. just gonna take that hand out before it is able to become a problem. I saw someone recently talking about the soundtrack to this game and how, you know, the soundtrack is overrated, there's too much organ. And it's like, one, it's totally not overrated. Two, it's a horror game. Organ is like the official instrument of, well, actually now maybe the synthesizer is the official instrument of spooky things, but like, the organ, you know. Okay then. You know, the organ is... let's see here. Dean Diaco says, "Sup Joe, what's doing? Playing some Castlevania IV. That's right, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of the stage. Stages are long in this game too. That's okay. The Guabol says the Princess Bracelet isn't as good as the crossbow. The crossbow is situationally great. And I talked about that a little bit when I streamed it the other day, but the crossbow is situationally great. It makes red armors sort of trivial, which is great. But against a lot of the bosses, it's kind of useless, and in some situations it will find an enemy and sort of get stuck in this weird pattern where it just circles around the enemy because because it can't move, like, it can only turn at certain degrees, and when it isn't able to make a proper like turn to home in on an enemy, it will just circle around it, and then you can't fire another one because you can only have one crossbow on screen at a time. And also the non-magical crossbow is situationally good, but also situationally garbage because it goes at an upward angle, which means you know, if you're in a spot where the level is scrolling downward, you're gonna have trouble hitting enemies that don't jump up, you know, to sort of rise in front of you, to crouch to sort of hit anything and get really close to it, and that is like not the optimal way to sort of do that. So but just the same, you know, Super Ghouls and Ghosts is a super fun game, and you, again, the crossbow is a dope weapon. The crossbow and the knife are sort of what you want to stick with in that game, but the Princess Bracelet really just annihilates some of the bosses and tougher enemies. And especially if you've got it powered up where it goes almost the full distance to the screen like all the other weapons do, or very close to that, you know, what all the other weapons do. You know, then you're in a spot where that's sort of the spot you want to be in, right? The Unlikely Toad says, "I never cared for how Super NES sounded, but I can appreciate it. I believe in part it comes down to nostalgia and what's familiar. I didn't have SNES growing up, I went with the Genesis." I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said for the nostalgia factor. I really try to look beyond that and sort of separate, like, oh, I have nostalgia for this thing, and I enjoy it because of that, versus like, okay, I actually enjoy this because I think it's good work, good art, or good, you know, a good game or whatever. I also, as I said the other night, because someone asked in one of the streams last week, I think it was, I had a Super Nintendo and a Genesis growing up. But I think that both have games that sound really good. I think it's easier to have something that's not great sound passable on the Super Nintendo. But I think, essentially, I think the Genesis has both higher highs and lower lows than the Super Nintendo. So, like, I would say, like, the best music on the Genesis is better than anything on the Super Nintendo. But I would also say that the worst music on the Genesis is worse than anything on the Super Nintendo. So, yeah, I'm not going to go over there because it's a stopwatch. It's a stupid, useless, heart-sucking stopwatch. You know, but yeah, I mean, this Ken Kutaragi, father of the PlayStation, Ken Kutaragi designed sound chip for the Super NES. I just think it sounds really great in a lot of contexts. And I actually think this game is one of those. Get away from me. The dagger worse than the stopwatch? Probably. The stopwatch is at least not like just a weaker version of a different weapon, where the knife is... I don't know if it's this 8-bit do controller or what, but I'm having trouble whipping straight up. But I do like this 8-bit do controller. So while I will say this game has a great soundtrack, this like sort of free jazz... Oh, come on! This sort of free jazz flute that's going on in this song is like not my favorite thing. It sort of... Like we've got the... Okay, so we get the organ, and we've got the kind of like free jazz, you know, backbeat here. Already. But once we get to the flute, I'm sort of checked out on this track. Perfidious Leaf says, hello once more. Hey Joe, how would you rank this game among Castlevania titles? You should back up the stream, because I just talked pretty extensively about that. So I would either, you know, rewind or watch the archived version, because I sort of talked at length about that. So... But the short answer, if you just really want to know, I like it, and that's about it. Come on, come on. Nice. Now see, there's the flute again. This is sort of like light jazz style, easy listening flute with the bass. Like, not good jazz, not like Miles Davis or even like Dave Brubeck or, you know, like jazz did this weird thing where sort of like, after the 1960s, I want to say, 50s, 60s, jazz started to get really dumb and terrible. Like Kenny G style stuff started to be what passes for jazz, and you know, I'm just not about that life personally. Oof. Perfidious Leaf says, how do you feel about the complaint that it's too easy? I mean, I understand that complaint in the context of Castlevania. But I mean, also it has a difficulty setting. Like, turn it up. I don't know. Oh, actually, I do want that axe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Difficulty arguments are always weird for me because I don't really mind it when games are easy, and also I think to someone who is not an experienced player coming to this game, it wouldn't be easy. Like, the easy complaint hinges on you're already super into Castlevania, right? Because if you're not, the game's not easy. Stupid birds. Oh my god. I'm gonna be wrapping up here. In fact, my next life is gonna be my last life. Because I got stuff to do, and that's not great. I hope I can stick it back up there. There we go. There we go. The Unlikely Toad says, anytime I've played, I've never seen past this level. Yeah, see, that goes back to the too easy complaint. Like, if people aren't Castlevania masters, you know, they're not going to think it's too easy. So, I don't know. I mean, if you think it's too, if you're a person who, and I'm not saying perfidiously if that this is you, but I'm saying if you're a person who thinks it's too easy, that's a valid complaint, but like, I don't know. It's whatever. So yeah, that's Castlevania IV. Super Castlevania IV, which is weird because in Japan, it was just called Castlevania. Well, it wasn't called Castlevania. It was called Akumajo Dracula, but which is the same as the title of Haunted Castle, and like we named them all different things. So NES, MSX, arcade, Super Nintendo, and I think even the X68000 version were all just called Akumajo Dracula, which is Devil Castle or Demon Castle Dracula. But we called them all different things. Castlevania on the NES, Vampire Killer on the MSX, Super Castlevania IV on the Super NES, and the X68000 version didn't come out here, but when it came out on the PlayStation, we called it Castlevania Chronicles. So, Perfidious Leaf says there should be an unspoken rule for game designers: if an animal can't conceivably kill you in real life, don't make it an enemy in a game. The Gwobble says, are there infinite continues? I don't remember. Yes, this game has infinite continues. Perfidious Leaf says there's like 4 games just called Akumajo Densets over there. I don't feel this game is too hard, by the way, just reiterating Ego Raptor's complaints in order to make conversation. No. There's only one game called Akumajo Densets. That's Castlevania 3. There are several called Akumajo Dracula. So Akumajo Densets is Demon Castle Legend, we'll say, or Demon Castle Story, but Legend sounds a little cooler. Demon Castle Legend. Akumajo Dracula is Demon Castle Dracula, Devil Castle Dracula. And yeah, as I said, NES, MSX, arcade. So, tomorrow, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to be doing something, and I'm probably going to go back to nighttime stream tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm just going to be kind of bumming around the house. The Brewers have the day off. Hopefully they'll beat the Dodgers again tonight. They're traveling to LA to beat them on Monday in their home turf. Yeah, and Perfidious Leaf says there's also a password system, which, yeah, there are infinite continues, but there's also passwords which will start you at whatever stage you left off. But I'm going to go. gonna take my dogs out and get ready. Brewer's starting in about an hour, so I'm gonna go do that and watch some spooky movies and stuff. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great spooky October weekend.